of the equipment park, and there was renewed sniping from the mountainside. The long afternoon of the northern autumn dragged on. Finally, at 2200, the sun set, and it was not fully dark for another hour. For some time, there was an ominous quiet, and then, at 0030, the enemy began attacking in force, driving herds of livestock, lumbering six-legged brutes bred by the North Ullerans for food, to test the defenses for electrified wires and landmines. Most of these were shot down or blown up, but a few got as far as the wire, which, by now, had been strung and electrified completely around the perimeter. Behind them came parties of Skilkan regulars with long-handled insulated cutters. A couple of cuts were made in the wire, and a section of it went dead. The line, at this point, had been rather thinly held. The defenders immediately called for air support, and Jarman ordered 15 of his remaining 20 air jeeps and 5 combat cars into the fight. No sooner were they committed than the radar on the commercial airport control tower picked up air vehicles approaching from the north, and the air raid sirens began howling and the searchlights went on. As a protection from the sudden fury of the summer and winter gales, the buildings were all low, thick-walled, and provided with steel doors and window shutters, which were electrically operated and centrally controlled. These slammed shut in every occupied building. The contragravity which had been sent to support the ground defense at the south side of the reservation turned to meet this new threat, and everything else available, including the 4 heavy air tanks, lifted up. Meanwhile, guns began firing from the ground and from rooftops. There had been 4 air cars, ordinary passenger vehicles equipped with machine guns on improvised mounts, and 10 big lorries converted into bombers in the attack. All the lorries and all but one of the makeshift fighter escorts were shot down, but not before explosive and thermoconcentrate bombs were dumped all over the place. One lorry emptied its load of thermoconcentrate bombs on the control building at the airport, starting a raging fire and putting the radar out of commission. A repair shop at the ordnance depot was set on fire, and a quantity of small arms and machine gun ammunition piled outside for transportation to the outer defenses blew up. An explosive bomb landed on the roof of the building between Company House and the telecast station, blowing a hole in the roof and demolishing the upper floor, and another load of thermoconcentrate missing the power plant set fire to the dry grass between it and the ruins of the native troops' barracks. Before the air attack had been broken up, the soldiers of King Firkked and their irregular supporters were swarming through the dead section of wire. They had 4 or 5 big farm tractors, nuclear-powered but unequipped with contragravity generators, which they were using like ground tanks of the first century. This attack penetrated to the middle of the reservation before it was stopped, and the attackers either killed or driven out. For the first time since daybreak, the red and yellow lights came on around the power plant. As soon as the combined air and ground attack was beaten off, von Schlichten ordered all his available contragravity up, flying patrols around the reservation and retaliatory bombing missions against Skilk, and began bombarding the city with his 90mm guns. A number of fires broke out, and about 0200 a huge expanding globe of orange-red flames soared up from the city. "There goes Firkked's thermoconcentrate stock," he said to Paula, who was standing beside him in front of the screen. Half an hour later, he discovered that he had been overly optimistic. Much of the enemy's supply of Terran thermoconcentrate had been destroyed, but enough remained to pelt the reservation and the company buildings with incendiaries when a second and more severe air attack developed, consisting of 40 or 50 makeshift lorry bombers and 15 air cars. The previous attack von Schlichten had viewed in the screen at the telecast station. It was his questionable good fortune to observe the second one directly, having been out inspecting the defenses around the ordnance depot at the time. Like the first, the second air attack was beaten off, or more exactly, down. Most of the enemy contragravity was destroyed. At least 24 vehicles crashed inside the reservation. As in the first instance, there was simultaneous ground attack from the southern side, with a demonstration attack at the north side. For a while, von Schlichten found himself fighting hand-to-hand, first with his pistol, and then, when his ammunition was gone, with a picked-up rifle and bayonet. It was full daylight before the last of the attackers was either killed or driven out. 5 minutes later, while he was reloading his pistol clips with salvaged cartridges, the Northern Star came bulking over the mountains from the west. End of Chapter 10. Recording by Acacia Wood.